And so for me, it's been an evolving God. It started out as the group, because the group together, I trusted the group conscience. And it's been evolving, and I study everything, and I can't describe my God. And my God does not belong to a single religion. My God belongs to all of them. And I'm allowed to have that in AA, and that's the cool thing. And if your God belongs to a religion, we encourage you to have that, even if it's different than somebody else's. The beautiful thing in Alcoholics Anonymous, and this helped me, which means that you can have very different people in the same room. And all we do is use the word God, and it can mean whatever it needs to mean to you. It can mean the tree. It can mean the Buddha. It can mean Jesus. It can mean anything that works for you. And that is my favorite thing about AA.
Well, hello, friends of Bill W. and other friends. You have landed on Sober Speak. My name is John M. I am an alcoholic, and we are glad you are all here, especially newcomers. Newcomers, that is, both to recovery as a whole and newcomers to this podcast. Sober Speak is a podcast about recovery centered around the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. My job here on Sober Speak is simple. My job is to provide a platform to the amazing stories of recovery all around us. Consider Sober Speak, if you will, your meeting between meetings. Please remember, we do not speak for AA or any 12-step community. We represent only ourselves. We are here to share our experience, strength, and hope with those who wish to come along for the ride. Take what you want and leave the rest at the curb for the trash man to pick up. Hello, my little chickadees. That was the voice of Cyndi M that you heard at the beginning of this here episode. What episode is this? This is episode number 303. And you are going to hear so much more from Cyndi, in un momento. But first things first, this here episode is brought to you by Idalisa and Brad. And what, you may ask, did Idalisa and Brad do? Well, let me fill you in. They went to our little website, www.soberspeak.com. They clicked on that little yellow donate tab, and they made a did my voice just break up? A contribution. So thank you so much, Idalisa and Brad. This here episode is coming right out to you'uns. All right, let's skip over some of my nonsense that I many times have on the beginning of this and get right into Cyndi, because you folks are going to enjoy this one. This is Cyndi M. We are calling this one Evolving God. Cyndi is from Louisville. Louisville, as Don M. Kind of taught me to slur the word there a little. But anyway, she has a home also in Cincinnati. And we talk about this on the podcast, on the episode, I guess I should say. Cyndi has a sober date of December 17th of 1985. And as Cyndi says, when we're talking, she has a big story. And boy, does she have a big story. We discuss so many things, but at the top of the list, for me at least, were sponsorship, long-term sobriety, and what that means. And then we get into Cyndi's story a little bit, her homelessness that she experienced, and how she was cycled through the foster care system and orphanages as a child. And then she also hitchhiked across the country at a very early age. Cyndi was actually emancipated as an adult at age 17. She had 7 felonies, alcoholic seizures, jail time. One of the most intriguing parts of this story to me was her trauma that was triggered at 17 years sober when she had a back surgery. We talk about PTSD, dealing with chronic pain, and Cyndi's life as a circuit speaker within Alcoholics Anonymous. And folks, that is just the tip of the iceberg. So enjoy Cyndi M on this here episode number 303. And as always, we will have plenty listener feedback at the end of this here episode. Enjoy. Okay, everybody. So today we're sitting here with Cyndi M, Cyndi with a Y, M. And so, Cyndi, I'm going to go ahead, let you introduce yourself, give your sobriety date if you wish, and tell people where you live in this great land of ours, please.
Hi, my name's Cyndi. I'm an alcoholic. I've been sober since December the 17th, 1985. Every single day in a row. And primarily, I live in Louisville, Kentucky, but I also live part-time in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Okay, Louisville, Kentucky, and then Cincinnati, Ohio. Okay, so, and why do you go back and forth between the two locations?
Well, I'm at an age that I was saving for a second home. And my parents are ill. My dad had cancer. My in-laws have Alzheimer's. So I bought a house here so that I could be close and help them, which is a miracle of recovery. Not usually where people dream of their second home, Cincinnati, but that's where I have mine.
And that's really cool that people can lean on you, depend upon you. And I'm sure we'll get into your story in a second. I'm sure it wasn't always that way.
No, and taking care of them is a huge miracle and was a lesson in forgiveness. Actually, you'll hear more later, I'm sure, but it's a very big, amazing thing that I'm so grateful for.
Okay, so you were referred to me by Rena K, who has been on the podcast in the past. And what's your relationship with Rena?
I sponsor Rena. Lucky me.
Yes, you are a lucky person to be able to sponsor her. And I think you also sponsored Jennifer HK, who lives down here in my area.
I did.
So talk to me about sponsorship and what that has meant to you throughout your sobriety.
Well, both sides of sponsorship are equally important, is my experience. And, my sponsor says if you only have one side, either side, what you have is a cesspool with one pipe in and no pipe out. And I believe that. But sponsorship saves the day. And for me, having a sponsor that I'm willing to hear is really important in that relationship, which it was the first place I really learned about intimacy and really unconditional love on both sides. The women I sponsor, I can't tell you how much I love and respect them. I believe in shoulder-to-shoulder sponsorship. So I learned so much from them. I sponsor some incredibly wise and amazing women.
So what do you mean by shoulder-to-shoulder?
I don't believe in hierarchy and sponsorship. Gotcha. Like I also don't believe that in hierarchy in recovery. In other words, I can sit in the back seat the same as somebody that's a year sober. I just want everybody in the car. And some folks, and it's okay because that's their value system. And that's one of the real gifts of recovery for me is that I can have a different one, but not judge yours. And I can celebrate yours. So if you believe that always the person with the longest sobriety goes in the front seat when you travel, I can champion that and appreciate it. I just believe differently, and that's okay. And that's one of the gifts of longer sobriety, because in shorter sobriety, I was very much rigid, my way or the highway kind of gal.
Yeah, I remember that. I was the same way. I remember just like I shudder about some of the things that I said in meetings, kind of I don't know, right wing kind of statements. I don't really know how, like, it's my way. This is how the people got sober in the beginning. And if you don't follow this, you're not doing it right. I can remember all that.
Then you see people get sober and stay sober doing it different. And it's like, The only thing I think we must have in common, I don't think we get any peace and serenity if we don't work the steps and grow along spiritual lines, whatever that means to you. But, that's what I believe. And I believe that what my job as a sponsor is to hold women's hands as we go through the steps and what I've been really blessed with the last 10 years is women with long-term sobriety that are amazing, incredible women have asked me to sponsor them. And so the gift is, how do we apply the steps and revisit things because we are more mature, both in our sobriety and our life, and unlayer that onion a little bit more so that we can be more of what God had chosen for us to be. And that's frightening when you're a long time sober to go and do that. It's a big jump to do that. But it's the biggest gift in my life to get to walk shoulder to shoulder with somebody doing that. It means I share my stuff too. It means that it's not just, I'm not their parent, I'm not their teacher. It means that we're on a similar journey. We're exploring, we're holding hands. That's what that shoulder to shoulder means to me.
Yeah, I love it. And I also know I'm kind of starting at the end and going back, but like I always say, I just like to make this conversation organic, and particular questions come to mind. I know that you are a businesswoman.
Mm-hmm.
And can you describe the kind of work you do? I mean, I'll leave it to you how much information you want to give, but I just want to know what kind of business you do, how you got into it, what it means to you in terms of recovery.
Yeah, let me give you the background. Okay. I started drinking very young. It was my solution. I think it kept me from killing myself in the beginning. I felt like I was bleeding from the inside out as a kid. There was a lot of violence in my life and a lot of things. And I reacted to it alcoholically. And so I ended up being homeless and living on the streets and doing all the things people on the streets do. I did not go to high school. I didn't just not graduate. I didn't enroll. When I got sober the first time, it was 1980. So I had 5 years around before I finally was able to really get and stay sober. And I got here on 7 felonies. And I became an emancipated adult because I had burnt the system out. So an uneducated person.
Excuse me real quick. What is an emancipated adult? What does that mean?
It means that even though I was barely 17 years old, they made me be a legal adult. So that I would be responsible for myself. And they didn't want to put me in juvenile anymore. They put me in county jail and they were going to try me as an adult. And I was very fortunate that I went into alcoholic seizures in jail, which are very dangerous. Alcoholic seizures are worse. Alcohol withdrawal is worse than any drug withdrawal. It's more dangerous. You can die. It only lasts 3 days, but you can die. And so because of that, a judge got me to treatment where they could physically take care of me. And I ended up getting an opportunity to be exposed to sobriety. And I did not go to prison. And so it was just a series of gifts for me. So then I got sober, and I've always, when I was a little kid, I cleaned houses and mowed lawns and things like that. And it was a way that I could be away from home, and it was rewarded instead of threatening anybody, because I was out making money. And so when I got sober, I worked places, and then I started a business.
And just real quick, I want to back up a little bit when you were 17 and childhood and stuff like that. And I've heard a little bit of your story, not all of it, but I know you were living in different cities, kind of traveling the country and such. So can you talk a little bit about that? And also I wanted to know, are these the same parents that you're taking care of today? Were these the same parents that were raising you at that time?
Yes.
Wow.
That's the miracle. And I have a big forgiveness story around that. And so, yeah, I hitchhiked from one end of this country to the other. I was in over 24 institutions, foster homes. Oh, by the way, the parents that I was adopted into that family as an infant. And then I still went back to orphanages, foster homes. My dad probably has dissociative disorder. And one of the things that I learned in long-term recovery was that he really did very much love me. I didn't feel love because it was so inconsistent and it was coupled with violence. And so one of the gifts of recovery, and it's what I tell my girls. It's like, before you tell me your story about your parent, tell me their story with theirs.
Mm.
And when you can see that, then all of a sudden things begin to align and make more sense. And there's compassion. I could not forgive my parents until I became usefully whole in recovery. So when I became whole, like all the holes God filled, you guys filled, I had to do an awful lot of work. But what happened was, then I didn't need them to fill those. I wasn't looking for them to parent me or make up for all the hurts. I could come to them as an adult and see them as people instead of parents. And when I could do that, I had lots of empathy for them. And it took me a long time. This did not happen. I forgave my dad at 17 years sober. So it didn't happen. I mean, my dad, it's like I've had lots of surgeries on my back. Most of those happened from a wreck, but it exacerbated a break that happened when I was a kid from getting kicked through doors. And the great thing that happened was, when I had to have this big surgery and they had to cut part of my spinal canal, the great thing that happened was that it triggered all that trauma that I thought I was over. And when I was in the hospital. And
Wow.
So at 17 years sober, I'm like, holy moly, what do you do with this? I thought I was done with this. And I was at least connected with the sponsor. So here's another thing of why connection with the sponsor is so important. And I called that sponsor. I'm like, what do I do? And what we did was, we went and did a lot of forgiveness work. And through that, it's been healing ever since. And then in 2010,
just real quick, I want to go back to that, because I've not heard of that sort of trigger before. Surgery triggering trauma. Have you run across other people that has happened to, and are you able to explain exactly what goes on in a situation like that?
I haven't necessarily run into that surgeries, but I've run into, like, when I tell my story, I get a lot of calls about two things. One is trauma, right? And different things trigger it for different people. And, how do we remain a sober woman? And what are all the tools I've used to work through that? And I'm blessed that I can share that. There are very few experiences I haven't had around that. And I've been diagnosed with severe PTSD. It doesn't run my life. It doesn't rule me. I've been so blessed. I have all of these tools that I get to share with other women. And then the other thing I get lots of calls about are how to manage chronic pain and remain a sober woman. And because I have, I haven't told you my whole story, but I have lots of that. And that's the really cool thing that recovery does. It's just a different angle of approach. And so the very same things, like every tragedy, think about it. Somebody's back getting broken, being kicked through doors as a little kid. That sounds like trauma. That I could get people to feel really sorry for me for that, right? Forget that. Because of that, it's become such a gift in my life and to other people. The other thing is, I went through all this hell sober, because I got sober. I had a business. I had a Harley Davidson. I had a wreck. I got drove over by a car in the middle of the highway. I had a traumatic brain injury, spinal cord injury. I lost everything I owned. And I was on food stamps and Social Security disability at 12 years sober. So what's going to become of me, right? And so that sounds really terrible too. If I didn't have the childhood I had, I would not have been prepared for the wreck and all of those things. Then I had cancer. This all happened in 6 years. Then I had the lower back surgery because the back break got exacerbated in the wreck. And then for the grand finale of that 6 years, I fell through an attic in my Victorian house and broke my neck and was paralyzed and spent 3 months in the hospital. But here's the good news. In that 6 years, I learned to walk 3 times. AA never left me. My family's not capable of showing up for me in that way. They came for 1 week. AA did. over and over. And when I didn't think I had any value because my face got ripped off, my brain injury, my big, bright brain, I couldn't remember anything anymore. I couldn't earn money, which are all things I thought gave me value. And I think that's really, I'm sorry I'm going so fast, but I think that's really what we mean when we say that our value can't come from anything outside of us, not what we do for a living, not how much money we have or don't have, not how we look, not how smart we are. Our value has to come from just being a child of God and being willing to be a good steward of whatever God gives us. It's because in a moment, all of that was gone. And then what happened was people brought me newcomers, and they brought me newcomers that were feeling sorry for themselves. And I was having seizures, and I couldn't remember their name after they left, but I would have a seizure while they were whining to me. And all of a sudden they would feel better, which is just, and I didn't know what happened. I just knew when people came to my home, they felt sad. And when they left my home, they felt happy. And what I did, because we have to partner with God, is I let it be enough. I let it be enough for my life to have value and me to be useful. And that's what sponsorship gives you on the end of being a sponsor, no matter what. That's what making coffee gives you, no matter what. That's what taking a senior person to meetings does, no matter what. It gives you value. And if I can help somebody, my life's worth living, period. Not my businesses, not money, not houses, but the ability to reach out and make a difference in somebody else's life. That's the magic. And how blessed am I? And so every single bad thing that's ever happened, God has made great use of. And I'm blessed in every way imaginable. All this pain I've been in, I've actually written articles for magazines about how to do pain organically. I've been paid lots of money to speak at conferences, outside of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's like, why? Because I have this big, crazy story. And so, but also what happened, I didn't use this big, crazy story to feel sorry for myself. I applied the steps. I was in Alcoholics Anonymous. And because of it, I have a very different angle of approach. And I don't feel sorry for myself. I know what matters. And who's luckier than me, John? Who's luckier? Nobody. I'm God's favorite.
I think I'm God's favorite. I may have to argue with you on that.
Right? Well, that's the beautiful thing. My grandma, who was like my person, right? And then changed my life, because she was consistent in her love. Right? She was consistent in love, but I got to do her eulogy. I got to do my father-in-law's eulogy. I got to do my brother-in-law's eulogy. Nobody would even let me near them. So this is miraculous, right? And, but my grandma, what I said in her eulogy, I said, we called her Go-Go. I believe I was Go-Go's favorite. And I looked at my cousins and I said, and I believe that every one of you thought you were too. And that's how I want to be. And I think that's representative of God. I think we all get to be the favorite and feel special and cared about when we develop that relationship.
So I wanted to also talk to you a little bit about, I don't know why this intrigues me, but the life, if you will, of the circuit speaker, because people look at circuit speakers, right, in some sort of elevated position sometimes, but every time I talk to them, they have a little bit of a different take on it, if you will. So what has it been like being a circuit speaker, like the ups and the downs, and what have you learned about yourself from it?
Oh my goodness. The first time I spoke at a conference, I was 4 years sober. And I immediately got asked to speak at another conference because I already had a big story before all this sober trauma happened, right? I had a big story and I talk good. And I was using profanity from the podium that no one should use, but yet they were still asking me to speak at other conferences. It was insane. And my sponsor grabbed me by the short hairs and said, do not believe your own press, first thing. And second thing she did was she pulled me off for a while. And because I was believing my own press, because what you see of me is 1 hour. And sometimes you get treated like a rock star, and sometimes you get treated like, who cares? But it is ego feeding. And so I always remember, don't believe your own press, because people know you 1 hour. And the difference now is I very much talk about my shortcomings from the podium, not a fifth step, but the fact that I'm a human being and it is in my erroring, it's when I fail that you get to see my real recovery. Because will I own it? Will I take responsibility for it? Will I be vulnerable enough? You talked about that in the beginning. But will I be vulnerable enough to show my humanity to you so that you don't think that I'm more special than everybody else, because I'm not. And I just talk good and have a big story. And I sponsor these other women in recovery. The other thing I do is I only speak once a month. If I allowed it, I'd be out every week with the invitations I get. And I appreciate it. But there are so many ways to be of service in AA. And if I'm gone every week, whose wedding am I showing up for? Whose baby shower? How do I show up for my life? So one of the things is I took me off of the constant circuit, because a far better example lies in our daily lives. And what I do in that 1 hour, yes, it motivates people and sometimes inspires people. But what I do at home and in my community and with my parents and my relationships, that's way more important. And so, and that doesn't mean I'm saying no to AA requests. It means I'm saying yes once a month, and I'm saying yes to all the other things the rest of the time. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Yeah. So take me then back a little bit. So what age did you end up sobering up?
I came at 17. Got back and got more felonies when I relapsed. And I got sober finally at 22. And I've been sober every day in a row since I was 22 years old. But I've been drinking since I was 9, and I've been drinking alcoholically since I was 12. First time somebody confronted me about it, I was 14. My foster mom told me I was an alcoholic. And then when I wound up in the hospital, strapped to a stretcher hanging on a wall, and the cops had beat me with billy clubs to keep from shooting me, the nurse said, "You're an alcoholic. You did this," when I wanted to know who did this to me. And so even though I was very young, the problem with being that alcoholic that young is that I got sober with the maturation of a 9-year-old. So basic skill sets that some people get sober with, I didn't have. I wouldn't, even after I had my businesses and was successful, I had absolute terror to go to a fancy restaurant. Because I was sure everybody there would know I didn't belong there. And I was sure I would do something wrong, the wrong plate, the wrong fork or something. Now today I can go there all day long and it's fine and I love it and I love food. But those were some of the things. The Genie machine, I don't know, it was one of the first ATMs in Bennett. And that came out when I was very early in sobriety, and it would let you keep getting money even if you'd written check, and so I didn't know how to balance a checkbook. I didn't know how to do any of those things. And I really screwed up at like 5 years sober because I was unwilling to ask for help from other people in AA. When I got in trouble, then I was willing to raise my hand because I was afraid of going to jail sober. And people came and they helped me and I learned. But I didn't know what I didn't know, if that makes sense. And then maturity for being like in in sexual relationships. It's like somebody that's been in prison for a long time. They're not ready. And I wasn't ready. I didn't have the emotional maturity or skill sets to handle that. And I just re-traumatized myself with sexual relationships. Been having sex since I was 9 years old, but none of it was healthy. And so all that maturation had to come sober. And the truth is, Alcoholics Anonymous raised me. And there's nobody like if I ask you, if I say, John, I didn't know how to balance my checkbook. John, I'm bouncing checks. You may not be the financial person that can help me figure that out, but you'll know somebody that can, if I'll just be willing to tell you, because it's the shame of those kind of things. And it's different for all of us. But that shame, I believe, sends a lot of us out drinking. Because if I tell you that, you're not going to judge me. You're not going to be mad at me. You know, you're going to, now if I do it and you help me and then I do it again next month, you might be. But, but I've never met anybody that has real recovery that's not willing to help other people figure it out.
Right. I want to go back to something you said real quick that just struck me. You said you were strapped on a wall. Can you describe that again? It sounded like you were upright, up and down within. No. Okay.
So what happens is on the stretcher, they tie you down, and then in a wall in the hospital, they have hooks, and they put the stretcher up off the ground and hook it on the wall.
Oh.
So that because I was flipping it over on my face, and because I was so angry that I would just hurt me, which is the story of my life. And so they hung me on a wall to keep me from flipping the stretcher over anymore. Wow. I was an animal. I live like an animal. I come from the streets. I was treated like an animal. And so my sobriety in my life, John, I can't tell you. I can't tell you how miraculous it is. I can't tell you how grateful I am. I could never give back enough to pay back Alcoholics Anonymous, ever.
Okay. So did you have any idea, any inkling at the time that you had the kind of mind that could run businesses and be successful at it?
Well, when I was really little, like 8, 9 years old, I had a little lawn mowing and cleaning business. So I knew that I could hustle. And then on the streets, it wasn't one you want to talk about here, but I hustled. And so what I knew is I couldn't get a job because I just got a job setting tobacco in the fields when I first got sober, but I couldn't get a decent job. And I was arrogant. My ego compensated for how much insecurity and inferiority I felt. So my ego would override. It was a good use of ego. And I thought, if those people can, why can't I? The business I have now, my primary business is a digital agency. And when I had the wreck, and then I got cancer, and somewhere in between, after cancer. So after cancer and all of that happened, everything was succinct. When I had been so disabled and kind of homebound, the internet was new and AOL was new. And I got to talk to people and have community with recovering people all day long. And so I never got lonely, even in the middle of the night with pain and things. There were groups to talk, and I fell in love with it. I thought, oh my gosh, if this internet thing is responsible, the world could be so fair for disabled people, for everybody. And now, mind you, I'm still a recipient of the Traumatic Brain Injury Trust Fund. They're not giving me money. They're coming to my house to help me pay my bills because I'm not organized enough to figure it out anymore. And I told that lady, I say, look, lady, I'm going to start a business next week. Now, you can imagine what she must have thought. And what she said was, if you need help there, let me know. I'll help you organize there too. And I'm so grateful for that. And so I had $1,700 to my name, not to start the business. I had $1,700 to my name. And I started this business in a coffee shop. And somehow I got people to believe me and give me a deposit to build them a website that I can't build. And then I got people to build it that I couldn't pay until I got paid. And I started this business because I know how to hustle. And today it does business globally. And that's insane. You know, I mean, it's just insane. It's a global business. It's got incredible revenue. And then I started I wanted to help people in Haiti. And I was in an entrepreneurs group. And one of the guys had a factory that he built commercial panels to build commercial buildings that are hurricane resistant, tornado resistant. And we tried to help Haiti and build kit houses because it would have changed Haiti. We could rebuild Haiti in 2 months. And when the next earthquake or hurricane happened, they wouldn't be in the same spot that they got in. But you have to bribe your way in. It's really hard to help people sometimes. Mm-hmm. And then, so we started a small and tiny house kid business. And so we have them all over the country now, and even the Bahamas. And it's really cool. And now I'm building houses too. So it's just fun. It's just fun. Here's what's the advantage of not being educated and told. If you don't understand what you can't do, you can do anything. I didn't understand that you had to have a degree to do this or this or that, and I just did it. And I've often felt like an imposter, but it seems to be working okay, and I admit it when I feel like an imposter. Crazy, right? It's crazy.
I heard you tell a story once about, it was about being in a foster home. I believe there were some kids with muscular dystrophy, and then you got a job with the March of Dimes. Can you, or it was somebody. Can you walk through that, please?
Yeah, sure. That foster home where my foster mom told me that I was an alcoholic. So her kids had muscular dystrophy, and that home probably saved my life because I felt valued because they needed me. I helped put the kids to bed. I helped give them baths. I was 14 years old there. And I wanted to be there, but she had only one rule. I was allowed to drink, but I wasn't allowed to drink till the kids were in bed. But I couldn't keep that commitment. And I drank before the kids went to bed, and she had to kick me out, even though she really needed me. Mm-hmm. And and she said when we were playing chess and drinking beer, which I don't think it's that appropriate for your foster mom to drink beer with me, but when we were playing chess and drinking beer, she said, you know, you're an alcoholic, and I probably am too. So then fast forward, when I got sober the first time, I was sober about 2 years. And I was doing well. I was giving talks everywhere. And I had used money from a fundraiser when I lived in that foster home. I tried to invest the money and it went south, and I went to make amends. And through that process, somehow I got offered a job. It was all just weird timing. I thought it must have been God. And I accepted it. And I became the executive director for the outlying counties. I was 20 years old, 2 years sober, did not even go to high school. And I took the job, and I wasn't ready for it. See, I have an ego that has to be more to be enough. So I've got to have a better house so it's good enough for you to come to. I got to have a better car so it's good enough for you to ride in. I got to be more to be enough, not to be better than you. I don't want to be better than anybody. But long story short is I took this job and I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know what to do. And I did not come to AA and tell people I'm afraid. Instead, I came to AA, handed out my business card, told you that you too, if you did the steps, could have the same things I had. And what happened was I got so filled with hatred and self-hatred and shame because I knew I was a big fat liar. You know, I knew that I didn't know how to do it. I hid from the secretary. I had no idea what to do. That's what I mean by that maturation. I could convince you I was more mature than I was because I have good survival tools, but I really wasn't ready. And I didn't have the humility to come and say, I don't know. And if I did, I would have had two choices. People would have told me how to do it and what to do. Or they would have told me it was okay to quit something even if it looks like a gift. I didn't know I could quit the job. And so I felt like it was a gift from God, and so I had to have it. But I couldn't tell you because I was telling you how great I was because I got to be more to be enough, and I got drunk. I had that job for almost a year, and at 3 years sober, I got drunk. And I was relieved about it because I wanted to quit, but I didn't know I was allowed. But when I drank, I went back to AA. I thought I would get sober right away, and I couldn't, because what happened, I went to the meeting, I raised my hand, I'm back, and I left that meeting, and I was 21 years old at the time, and I bought my first legal bottle of whiskey. And it was on, and I drank for almost a year, and occasionally I tried to come back to AA, but that phenomenon of craving owned me until finally, I had a bottom, and I conceded to my innermost self, which did not happen in the first recovery. I admitted I was alcoholic. I admitted my life was unmanageable, had never been manageable, and I was alcoholic. What I didn't do was concede to my innermost self that I'm an alcoholic. And what happened this time is I had that shift where no matter how successful I get, no matter how much education I get, no matter how mature I get, no matter how much therapy I have, no matter what, I'm going to still be an alcoholic. It's not because of my childhood. It's not because of my lack of skills that I'm an alcoholic. I'm an alcoholic because of the way I react to alcohol. And I will always develop the phenomenon of craving, and it will take me out. And I said the magic words, God help me. And I have been sober ever since.
So you have quite a few people that are listening to you across the world, actually. And several of them, or many of them, I should say, are, they've considered Alcoholics Anonymous. They've considered other ways of staying sober. They, are listening to this because they're in some form or fashion are probably interested in sobriety. Can you talk a little about your experience, strength, and hope, and maybe how you struggled with that, and talk to those people about what they need to know about AA or any 12-step program?
Well, first of all, I'll tell you, I didn't trust it because people talked about God. And I had been dipped, sunk, every religion in the world, and it's like, and so I was afraid, and I was afraid, and I didn't trust people that tried to help me because I had always named people with an agenda. And anytime they tried to help me, it was, but you need to be like this, or you're a sinner, or you're a blank. And yes, we'll welcome you, but you're a sinner. It's like, golly, I still hate that. It's like, but there were some people, honestly, that would drop the F-bomb, and it made me more comfortable in the beginning. It doesn't make me more comfortable now, but in the beginning, there was an old timer that did that, and it made me feel like I didn't have to be perfect and that it wasn't what I was used to. So the first thing I had to do was be not afraid of all the God language. And the next thing was that I needed to find somebody when they told their story, because that's what the big book talks about. It's like, that I could latch onto. And all of us have a North Star inside of us that if we'll listen to it knows. And so once I could get over the God thing, I loved Alcoholics Anonymous. I had never been a part of something that I was really a part of. I didn't know how to be a part of things. And, they put me, they let me do things, and they put me in a car with them, and we went places, and we had fun, and we had picnics. And then they took me through the steps. I found a sponsor who took me through the steps, because you need a tour guide for this thing. And that's what a sponsor really is. It's your tour guide. And so we went through the steps hand in hand. And I learned about what they meant, and I learned about my choices around them. For me, the third step was very challenging. And the third step in Alcoholics Anonymous, for those of you that don't know, it's I'm turning my will and life over to the care of God as I understand them. And so that scared me to death. And I had other people that tried to get me to do that in other ways. And then they said I could have any God I wanted. And so for me, it's been an evolving God. It started out as the group, because the group together, I trusted the group conscience. And it's been evolving, and I study everything, and I can't describe my God. And my God does not belong to a single religion. My God belongs to all of them. And I'm allowed to have that in AA, and that's the cool thing. And if your God belongs to a religion, we encourage you to have that, even if it's different than somebody else's. The beautiful thing in Alcoholics Anonymous, and this helped me, it's like they even talked about Muslims in 1939, that even there were some of those in AA, which means that you can have very different people in the same room. And all we do is use the word God, and it can mean whatever it needs to mean to you. It can mean the tree. It can mean whatever, Buddha. It can mean Jesus. It can mean anything that works for you. And that is my favorite thing about AA, because I could safely get a relationship with a higher power that solved my problems. And my problems have been solved. And I have been made useful. And I am a whole human being. And somebody like me, I wasn't destined to be a whole human being. I was destined to be as broken and fragmented as I was when I came here. And I am not.
I had no idea what to expect when we got together. Like I said, I knew you a little bit. I knew some of your story, but I didn't know much. And this has been really just a great pleasure, Cyndi. You're an inspiration. Like you say, you have a big story, but there's a lot of depth and weight behind that big story. And I'm so glad we got together today. I always close this. Is there anything else you want to say before I close it out? I always read from page 164. Is there anything you just want to make sure you say?
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Well, God bless you. It says, page 164 says, abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to him and to your fellows, much like Cyndi was talking about earlier. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us, like me and Cyndi, as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. Once again, Cyndi, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you again, Cyndi. Wasn't she a treat? I absolutely enjoyed hearing her story, spending time with her, and I'm sure you did as well. If you could please go ahead and pause that little device that you're on there. Hit that share button and share Cyndi's episode with a friend or a family member. That episode may be just what they need today. And now on to a little bit of listener feedback. By the way, if you ever want to write into me, you're more than welcome to do that. I'm at John, JOHN, at soberspeak.com. And if you are not part of the super secret Facebook group, you can search up on your Facebook application, Sober Speak Secret Group. Ask for admission and we will get you on in that group. And if you're not following us on Instagram, it's at SoberSpeak, all one word. And Pinterest is the same thing, at Pinterest. And I actually have a Twitter account, but I've never really figured out what to do with that. I don't pay much attention to it. Forgive me if you're out there and you're on it and you don't see any responses or anything, but I think that's sober_speak, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, now on to a little bit of a listener feedback. Sue writes in, she says, subject line is greetings from Australia. Well, hello, Sue. She says, hello, John. Thank you for what you do on the Sober Speak podcast and your humor and warmth. Well, thank you, Sue. By the way, she spells humor wrong. When I say wrong, it's how the Australians and the English people spell it is with a O-U-R. I'm sure as Americans are spelling it wrong, but anyway, you get the idea. She says, I am English. Oh, living in Australia. And I listened to the, and I listened to the How Do You Cope with Ellis and John podcast from the UK, and she gave me their email, which you just mentioned in episode 299, because they had mentioned Sober Speak in their episode about John's struggle. The other John's struggle with alcohol. Well, that's cool, Sue, that you found that. Anyway, she says it was their podcast which recently led me to Sober Speak, and as an adult child of a mother who struggled with alcohol, I find it so helpful to listen to. It feels like things have come full circle. Best wishes, Sue. And so, I'm thinking about this actually while I am recording. I should have thought about this earlier. Sometimes I don't read things as closely as I should, but Cassandra, if you're listening to this and I have not forwarded you over her email, it sounds like the adult Children of Alcoholics Anonymous program, which has been featured here on Sober Speak, may be a benefit to Sue. So, Cassandra, please remind me if I forget, please. Thank you. And also, we also have Karen, who is a big ACOA advocate and listens to the program. So, Karen, I'm welcome to hear from you as well. Once again, if I forget. But anyway, Tracy writes in. She says, hi, John. Not sure how Sober Speak came to me on Facebook. Oh, she found us through Facebook. But it was a wealth of info on our program, steps, etc. And I have shared it with my sponsees. By the way, sponsees, I don't think is a real word. And it's coming up as a misspelled word here, but I think that is something that people in Alcoholics Anonymous use or other 12-step programs, and it's just interesting to me the language that comes up out of all these 12-step programs. But anyway, she says, I have 28 years, and I am so thankful for our program, and God gave and gives me a new life. God bless, Tracy. Well, you're right about that, Tracy. I appreciate you writing in, and God has given us a new life. Nancy writes in, and the subject line was Scott Redmond. Now, Scott Redmond is an episode that we published. In fact, I think I've got it here. Where do I have it? Scott, I think it's episode number 296. Now that I'm looking at what she wrote, she actually explains it's episode number 296 in here. But nonetheless, this is an episode that we published a few weeks back, right? Or a month back, whatever it is, a month or 2 months back. And it's episode number 296. And Scott is a gentleman that has a renowned speaker in Alcoholics Anonymous that has gone to the big meeting in the sky. But she says, hi, John, I'm a longtime member of Al-Anon, but I listen to your podcast as well. As well as the recovery show almost daily. It's a wonderful addition to my meetings. And she's talking about the recovery show, which is put on by a friend of mine named Spencer, and his is geared all Al-Anon over there, which I am primarily AA, but he has a great podcast, and I highly recommend that. Anyway, she says, I have listened to episode number 296 with Scott Redmond several times. What can I say? That man was one in a million. The community has lost such a wise and beloved member of AA. I agree, Nancy. I agree. I was devastated to hear of his passing and can't seem to find anything about how he died or when. He had to have been only in his 50s, question mark, what a loss for his family and all that he inspired and helped throughout the years. His story and delivery was both incredibly funny, but filled with such spirituality and strength. Can you tell me a bit more about him, how I can write his family? I would greatly appreciate it. By the way, she says, I have been a guest on the Recovery Show podcast with Spencer and told my friend about both your podcasts. What a gift to have this available to so many. Thank you, Nancy L. Well, I took her email and I copied my friend Bill C on the email. And the reason I copied him is because I knew that Bill was he was very close to Scott. And so Bill replied, by the way, I also gave her the URL if anybody wants to go there. It's called scottredmond.net, where you can leave comments to Scott's family and for others to see publicly regarding Scott. And that's Scott, SCOTT Redmond, REDMAN.net, if you want to go out there and leave some comments for Scott's family. Anyway. And then Bill C responded about Scott, and he said, Scott was a dear friend of mine, and I miss him every day 15 years later. He had hepatitis C and never took treatment for it. He got liver cancer. They did a pretty radical surgery and removed the tumor. He lost a lot of liver function and was in line for a transplant, but got an infection and became too weak to survive the surgery and passed away. Very sad. What a legacy he left behind. His memorial is something I will never forget. He was greatly loved and had a major impact on me and many others. So thank you, Nancy, for writing in. Thank you, Bill C, for your comments there. And God bless you, Scott Redmond. We shall miss you. We do miss you. And there's still so much love being sent up for this man. Anyway, thanks for writing in, Nancy. Cynthia writes in, and Cynthia says, hello, I just found your website and I love it. I started step 3 and I was disappointed because there weren't any worksheets for it. Any chance there will be soon? Thanks and have a good day. So we have worksheets on the website for just about all the steps. I think step 3 and step 12 are missing. And, it just takes a while to get those things written properly, get them up. But I told Cynthia that we're going to get that up as soon as we possibly can. But thanks for writing in, Cynthia. And I'm glad those worksheets are working out for you. John D writes in, and John D says, hey, John, just wanted to say hello, and I hope you are recovering from your dose of the Rona. He's talking about the Corona that I had, and yes, I'm doing much better. Still kind of lingering on a little, but overall is doing all right. He says, when I opened my last email to you with Ola John, he put OLA John, I thought I was saying hello, John, in Spanish, but perhaps my Spanish is worse than yours. Well, yeah, I think you're right. And that's really hard to do, John. So anyway, he spelled Ola, which is HOLA, OLA, and that's what he's talking about. Anyway, John says, I received my 6-month chip last week. I'm feeling pretty grateful about that and recovery in general these days. This year has been turning into something I never believed possible. God seems to be placing my work in every city and town I've ever worked in over the last few years. Oh, wow. That must be, kind of being able to go back to those towns and reminisce and see it from a different viewpoint. Anyway, he says, places I spent many nights trapped in my alcoholism, feeling hopeless. It's been an amazing experience to be working in the same places and having a completely different experience. Oh, I'm sorry. I started talking before you were done. you were going to say that. Anyway, he says, enjoy your day and continue moving into the light. And then he put prayer hands and then like a what do you call? I guess that's like a rock and roll sign, or we know with the two outer. Down here in Texas, it means hook 'em horns, but I think it means other things worldwide. But nonetheless, any signs of John D. So it's interesting that you say that, John D. Moving into the light, because I have been considering that and praying about that and thinking about the things that bring me light and the things that do not bring me light recently, and how to balance all that out. Anyway, God bless you, my friend. All right, so that, my friends, is another episode number 303. Did I get that right? Yeah, 303 in the books, or in the can. Keep coming back. It works if you work it. May God bless you and keep you until then. I plan on being back next week, but you never know. God could call me to that big meeting in the sky, and I could be sitting down with Mr. Scott Redmond and telling him about how much I appreciated everything that he shared when he was down here. And many others. Oh, Charlie, and anyway. Get a little emotional thinking about that. Anyway. All right. Y'all take care. Love you. Hope to see you next week. Bye-bye.